Joy Poole, and welcome everyone to this session on Techposter syndrome. I am a founding partner at a tech consulting firm called Emergence, and I am also a leadership coach who works primarily with women in tech. I am super excited to jump into this topic. I love talking about Techposter syndrome. It is near and dear to my heart. But before I do, I thought it might be useful to give you some context on how it is, why it is that I speak on this topic at all. And for that, I need to take you back just a few years and to a time when I was sitting at a conference room table with 6 other people. Alongside these six other people, all 7 of us, we had bravely decided to launch a new tech consulting firm. And this was our very first official company meeting. Some of us knew each other a little bit better than others. And so we started to share some stories around the table, did a little bit of an icebreaker to get to know each other a little bit better. And as my partners started to share stories of their lives and their careers, I started to quickly realize the breadth and the depth of technical expertise and experience sitting around this table. I mean, I was hearing about technology that I had very, very little knowledge of. Some of it I had never even heard of before. And by the time it was my turn to share my story, I have to tell you, I was sitting in a puddle of sweat and anxiety. I was having thoughts like, there is no way I'm ever catching up to this crew. I was having thoughts like, what am I doing here? Are they wondering what I'm doing here? And what was I doing there? I had a bunch of background and experience in business to business development. I had a lot of digital marketing experience. My whole career had been working with companies in terms of how to help them drive change and use new tools to help them keep their customers, their employees, and their shareholders happy. And also, by the way, I wasn't as if I was technically illiterate. I understood the broad concepts of a lot of emerging technologies and how they related to business, but none of these facts, none of it stopped me from spiraling into a pit of self-doubt and then activating a soul-sucking strategy that I like to call smiling and Googling. You see, whenever I found myself feeling sort of technically out of my depth, I would smile and nod, and then behind the scenes, be furiously Googling, attempting to Google my way out of the discomfort I was feeling. Well, this just meant lists upon lists of podcasts and books and articles and things that I should know and things I needed to learn about. A few months after this moment at the boardroom table, I was actually watching a video of myself. I had interviewed a tech leader. It was sort of a fireside chat situation. And I'm watching an edit of the video back, and I catch myself red-handed. I catch myself smiling and nodding through something he's talking about that I don't understand. And I immediately hit pause because it gives me a gut punch. And I feel in that moment watching the video, how I felt in that moment. And that is anxious and completely distracted. I wasn't contributing my strengths or my understanding to the conversation. I was completely outside of myself thinking, how do I not know about this? I should really know about this. Does he know that I don't understand this? And that moment of observing myself and seeing that on my face, I realized something. I realized that this was not the first time I'd done this, that this had happened a lot in my career. And also critically, I recognized that look on my face. I'd seen it on a lot of other faces too, colleagues, clients. I got really curious about what was going on. And I gave it a name. I jokingly started referring to this sort of relationship with technology as Techposter syndrome. And, I was giving a nod to the more broadly well-known and what I saw as a close cousin to it of imposter syndrome. Well, I started to pinpoint the stories that I was telling about myself and technology, and I started to set them straight. I took steps within inside of our organization to identify and address Techposter syndrome for what it was, both in terms of our teams and clients that we worked with. And listen, I've come a long, long way since that puddle of sweat and anxiety. I am now learning about technology a lot more quickly than I used to because I'm having a lot more fun with it. Also, I am, probably more importantly, I am able to come to the table completely present and speaking from my strengths because I'm not distracted by it. And I educate and advise executives on technology and what's holding back their organizations from leveraging it to its fullest. And on that point, I speak from experience, personal experience, when I say that learning about technology, that is the easy part, if and only if you can first unlearn the fear that we have associated with not knowing enough about it. And that is what we're going to dive into a bit today. This idea of Techposter syndrome, as I've named it. And for those of you who are familiar with it, let's just see if I can advance my slide now. It is, I will just let you understand that it is indeed a thing. The fact is that the data strongly suggests that we are experiencing low confidence in our tech capabilities, with less than half of executives believing that they themselves have what it takes to lead in a digital economy, and only 16% of those executives believe that their teams have what it takes. Now, for me, it's completely logical that this perceived lack of technical acumen is leaving us very anxious, with 61% of us reporting that we're anxious about new technologies at work. And what's more is that we don't seem to be doing much about this, with only 23% of businesses reporting that they are actively engaging in cultural programs that would help to address this issue. So what is it that we can do, both as leaders and as individuals, about this? Well, the first thing I would invite you to consider is that the tone for this, it is set at the top. Now, before you make any assumptions, when I say the top, please do not think that if you are not CEO of your company, you are off the hook here. I am referring to leaders of all kinds to step up here. So whether you are overseeing an entire company, a small team, a project, or if your primary leadership role is to be CEO of your career and your own life, you are welcome to step up to this. And the first thing I would ask you to do is to recognize your influence. You have influence to either propagate or neutralize Techposter syndrome and its damaging effects. And that is because when you accept this kind of thinking for yourself or for others around you, you are sending, inadvertently as it may be, a micro signal to your proximity that there is shame in not knowing something. Secondly, it is super critical for all of us as leaders to understand what it is that we are up against. What is at the root of this problem? Executives, so many of them, want to come to me and talk about the sort of tech skills gap that might exist. But that is not what we are up against, really. What we are up against is fear itself. It blocks our intellectual capacity. When we are relying on these thoughts of, everyone understands this better than I do, I am too far behind to catch up, I really should know about this. These thoughts here, it's our amygdala that's in charge, the fear center of our brain, that piece of nervous tissue sitting at the bottom of the base of our brain that's calling the shots. And when we're having fear-based thoughts like these, it is impossible to think critically and to think deeply. So what I'm saying here is that Techposter syndrome, this isn't just about holding us back from learning about technology. It's holding us back way more fundamentally from asking good questions, and therefore from finding novel solutions to big problems. You know, I struggled with this for a long time. And I tried a lot of different tactics to get my amygdala, that fear center of my brain, to just pipe down when it came to me and my perceived lack of tech acumen. But only one tactic worked. The only way that I have figured out to turn down the volume of that fear center is to crank up the volume of my own curiosity. I'm inviting you, all of you leaders, to recognize that it's time to get openly curious. But that can be easier said than done, because our brains, they can sometimes tell us that curiosity is risky itself. If I ask questions, if I don't understand, if I need to learn more, what will people think? Or what if once I do understand this, I have to do something about it? Brene Brown calls this armored leadership. That's leading from a place where protecting your ego or fitting in is at the top of your priority list. And this is exactly where I was when I was sitting at that boardroom table. The act of getting curious, that is about removing that armor and being grounded in confidence, not that you know everything, but that you're a learner, that you're someone who's committed to getting it right. Now, the reason that making this shift from fear to curiosity is so tricky for so many of us is that we go to, I just need to let those thoughts go. Those fearful thoughts, I need to just stop thinking that. And this is the thing. That's not how our brains work. Our brains don't work in a vacuum where you can just stop believing something. If you're going to choose to stop thinking one way, you have to choose to believe something else, because your brain is always believing something. So if, for instance, I was going to stop believing everyone here knows more about this than I do, what was I going to believe instead? After much, much searching on this question and a lot of trial and error, this is what I came up with. Leaders ask questions. And I landed on this because I fundamentally believe that the single most impactful action that we as leaders can take is to get vulnerable and to openly admit when we don't understand something. This, by the way, applies far beyond tech, but that's a whole nother talk. The fact is that the best, most transformational leaders do not have all of the answers. They simply ask good questions. I want everyone here to think about the best boss they ever had. Put that person in your mind. Did they ask good questions? Of course they did. So it's up to us to start asking great questions as well. Some language you could try on for size as you go down this road. I really don't understand what you just mentioned. Can you walk me through it? This one I like using a lot. I'm still learning about whatever it is. Can we carve out some time to go over that in more detail? And then also appreciating and encouraging this kind of behavior is super important as well. Thank you for asking that question. I didn't understand that either. You modeled the asking really, really well. Thank you for that. Now, I do believe that asking thoughtful questions, having the courage and the curiosity to do that in the moment is key to increasing our understanding and promote a learning culture in general. And if there's only one thing you take away from this talk, I hope it is that. But I do get the question as well, is like, okay, but how do I sort of proactively learn and increase my overall tech acumen? And the way that most of us have learned is, we went to school and there was a syllabus and there was a plan. And it's very tempting to sort of say, I'm going to map out my 30, 60, 90-day plan and hit these milestones and try to learn about these specific technologies. But I'm here to say that I haven't seen that work in the context of how quickly technology is evolving. Instead, what has worked is when I let my curiosity run wild, when I actually fed it. And I have 3 tips for you on things to try in that vein. The first I would just encourage is just to make it fun. Keep it light. This is not about creating lists of things you should read, watch, listen to, consume, learn about. It's about increasing your overall exposure to the fascinating world of tech outside of areas that you may already understand, because it's fun and interesting. Lightweight podcasts, Instagram tech influencers, TED Talks, whatever floats your boat. This is about fun, and it creates the ripples for deep and meaningful learning. Secondly, once you have an idea of the types of things you want to consume, you will need some time, but not too much. The biggest mistake we make is overcommitting and then failing on those commitments. Start with 10 minutes a day. Gift that to yourself. And as you go through this process, if you find an area where you really want to explore, go ahead and focus for impact. But again, try not to get overwhelmed. Well, I like to just take 5 basic, when I find an area of tech that I'm really interested in, I write down the 5 most basic questions I don't understand. And I go out and find the answers, Googling, talking to people. I really try to understand that I'm looking for the broad concepts and not to get overwhelmed by the details as well. Now, for those of you who understand Techposter syndrome intimately, I'm going to leave you with one final word on this topic, and that word is yet. Carol Dweck coined the term growth mindset. And if you're not one of the 12 million people who have already watched her TED Talk, I do highly recommend it. But the gist of it is this: whenever you tell yourself, I don't understand this, or I don't know how to do this, simply add one word: yet. It is this kind of thinking that is going to release us as individuals, our teams, our businesses, society as a whole from the shackles of Techposter syndrome. And that is what will enable us to achieve far beyond our wildest ambitions. With that, I will just say thank you to Women Tech for having me, and for all of you for joining. We don't have, this is such a short session, we don't have much time for Q&A, but the most frequent question that I get off the back of this talk is usually about, where do I start in terms of finding that tech fun that you talked about? If I've created a starter list, a very general kickoff point for you to look at, a list of resources and tips for you. You can access that via the QR code that's displayed here. And also, as a leadership coach, I do work primarily with women who want to get in tech, who want to get the most out of their careers and lives. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can visit joypoole.com. Thank you so much.